Hello, I'm Georgina Rose. I'm a perennialist, polytheist, and thelemite, and welcome to the Darling YouTube channel. On this channel, we discuss everything related to magic, mysticism, religion, and everything on the fringes of esoterica. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Thelema, specifically about the divine feminine within Thelema. So for those who are completely unfamiliar, very quickly, Thelema is a magical system that emerged during the magical revival of the Victorian and Edwardian period. It was really heralded by Aleister Crowley, a very, very important occultist in occult history who had a series of visions in Cairo, which became a channeled text known as the Book of the Law. Thelema is an entire system for mystical development and ascension rooted around the idea of true will and accomplishing the great work. Thelema is intensely syncretic, bringing together all of the ideas of the Western esoteric tradition into one, into a new force, a new tradition, a practice for the new aeon. And the divine feminine is a metaphysical principle. The divine feminine is something that has existed within every religion since the beginning of time, because the divine feminine is one of the key forces that makes up the cosmos. There is the divine masculine and the divine feminine. The divine masculine is the merciful, the divine feminine, the severe, the divine masculine, the generative, the divine feminine, the receptive. And if you look at that further, you see the creation of the cosmos. The way that this works is that when things emanate down from divinity, there is force and form. And the form, the feminine, creates the force into something that can exist. When you look at the physical act of conception, and I know this sounds a little bit weird to use as a metaphor, but it is really the best way to explain it. When the masculine, releases, there are a lot of sperm, millions, right? But only one is brought into life by the egg, the feminine. The feminine culls and rejects all that is not valuable and then creates something new. If there was only the masculine, there would be no structure to the universe. The feminine is that structure. Femininity allows things to be brought into one thing, brought into reality, and formed into something that exists. Now, when we in our culture think of femininity, we think of a very specific cultural idea of being like soft and gentle, but that is not the reality of the metaphysical feminine. Within metaphysics, it is a force of nature, and there are many different archetypes that the feminine appears in, many different forms and many different ways that it allows the universe to have this basically restriction that allows it to exist entirely. And within Thelema, there are sort of two main feminine forms that outline the role of the divine feminine within the paradigm. Many people falsely believe that Thelema is really anti-feminine. There was a recent video essay that actually came out, and I'm not going to name it because I don't want to do drama. I'm not that type of channel, that basically argued that Thelema is incredibly misogynistic in its portrayal of the divine feminine, and that could not be further from the truth. If you are looking at it from a surface level and you only consider one of the feminine archetypes, and you only consider that feminine archetype in the exoteric or literal sense, I do see how you can reach this conclusion. As well, there have been Thelemic men in the past who have done things that are not so great, not so good, but that's not a problem with the paradigm. That's a problem with those people. And trust me, the women of the paradigm have made a lot of complaints about those people and done a lot of work to root that out. So without further ado, let's talk about it metaphysically. So the first femininity within Thelema is Nuit. So Nuit is the goddess of the first chapter of the Book of the Law. Thelema was received in Cairo when Aleister Crowley was on a honeymoon with his wife. He was exploring the pyramids, and he went into the pyramid, and his wife suddenly became possessed by a divine force who then began saying, hey, you need to write this down. This is important. And she began to channel the Book of the Law. Book of the Law is a channeled holy text. If you ever tried to read it, it's a lot. It's cerebral, it's abstract, it's a little hard to understand, and that's because it is literally given by the gods. And there are three gods that appear in the Book of the Law: Nuit, Hadit, and Ra-Horquit. Nuit is the divine feminine, the maternal principle. Hadit is the divine masculine, the paternal principle. And then Ra-Horquit is this combined form that is the divine child, the unification of the masculine and the feminine into something better. This is the secret of a lot of magic, that when the masculine and the feminine come together, something greater is formed, and that formation is reality. As I mentioned, that force and form existing is what generates reality itself. And so this is the epitome of creation, of existence. And so this unification of these opposite principles outlines how the cosmos work. And any religion that does not have a masculine or a feminine representation is an incomplete religion, one that lacks metaphysical grounding. Dion Fortune, a really, really important occultist, said, a religion without a goddess is halfway to atheism. And Thelema recognizes this. So Nuit as an archetype is the star goddess. There's a specific text by Fratericade, a very important Thelemite, called the hymns to the star goddess. They're numbered, I think it's 31 or 32, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, that were a lot of prayers to Nuit. And if you read through these, you can get a really good understanding of her archetypes and what she represents. But if you just read this chapter alone, you begin to see her. Nuit speaks extensively throughout this, and it explores her archetype as the goddess of the night sky. If you look to ancient Egyptian mythology, there is a goddess named Nut, which is Nuit, right? Clearly it's the same thing. I'm pronouncing it differently so you can understand that it's spelled a little bit differently to understand that distinction, because Thelema is not a reconstructed Egyptian polytheistic system. It's not Kemeticism. It's not Kemetic orthodoxy. It is using these archetypes in a new system, but there is that distinction there. But if you look at the Egyptian goddess Nuit, you do see a lot of the same archetypes. And when you look at her, you see her representation, and she is this blue figure, wearing blue to represent her, that bends over the entire sky in like a downward dog yoga position, and she makes up the entire night sky. She represents that pure feminine energy. She is the cosmos. She is the thing that preserves the little flowers. She is beauty. She is this celestial, cosmic feminine. She is the maternal, the motherly. She is all of these things, and she very much relates to other sort of celestial cosmic femininities, like a lunar femininity. I know this is not based in as many Thelemic texts, but what I see when I look at this is I see a lot of parallels between Nuit and lunar goddess archetypes, specifically archetypes like Selene, the full moon goddess of the Greek religion. I see pretty strong parallels there. And Nuit is this beginning of femininity. And when you look at the way Thelema explains these 3 chapters, you see that that first chapter represents, the first aeon that existed, the first age, which is that pagan age, the age when the goddess was centered, when there were fertility cults, when people were gathered in these circles and honoring the feminine before, the Abrahamic religions came and really reduced the feminine presence in the world. And that is Nuit. Nuit is this pagan, primordial, early feminine. And when you look at her archetype as the night sky, you see that she is a primordial force, a generative force, a force that existed before civilization itself came into being. She is the structure of the cosmos, because that's what the feminine is. The feminine is structure. But there is another femininity within Thelema, and this is the femininity of Babylon. And that word, people are going to react to that term. I'll just say that. People are going to feel weird about it. People definitely, when they hear that, they go, whoa, 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 whoa. Is this going Revelations mode? Is this going satanic? Hear me out. So when you look within the Book of the Law, you will see one line that sort of kind of represents and references Babylon. This line that references the Scarlet Woman. And the Scarlet Woman is basically a woman on earth that embodies Babylon and represents her. Now, there are sort of 2 ways of seeing this. There is one way that there is one literal Scarlet Woman incarnation at a time. I don't think that makes a lot of metaphysical sense. I think the second one is much more logical. But the second one is that the Scarlet Woman is an office that any woman can take upon herself when she is fulfilling the role of Babylon within the initiatic structure of Thelema's evolution. So any woman that sort of embodies this principle when she is helping someone else or herself go upon the path of evolution, of climbing up the degrees, of climbing toward the great work. This one makes a lot more sense, especially when you look at the life of Aleister Crowley, where he actually said that a number of women were his Scarlet Woman, right? A number of people fulfilled this role. And if you look at other people's, specific experiences within Thelema, this camp starts to sort of make a bit more sense. But that other interpretation is one that many people have made. So anyways, Babylon is this concealed form. She is red, wearing red. You see, I wanted to wear the colors. But she is a hidden form within Nuit. And if you look at the way that many priestesses of the Gnostic Mass, a central ritual within Thelema, are dressed, as you see them wearing mostly blue for Nuit and then a little bit of red for Babylon, because these femininities are not actually separate. Because when you look at Thelema, you actually see that things are not separate. All is connected, all is one. Aleister Crowley considered himself to be a yogi, and what is yoga but union? The goal of Thelema is to unite with the Godhead. That's what the great work actually is. You're not actually just the goal of Thelema is not to just do what you want all the time and be hedonistic and be like Aleister Crowley 2.0. No, the point is to unite with the Godhead, to dissolve yourself into the central oneness of creation, to become one with God, to unite. And that means that all these entities are different faces, different facets of that central oneness. There is a term in pagan spaces called soft polytheism, where you recognize the existence of multiple gods as representations of forms or faces of the divine, but you fundamentally understand that they're all part of one central oneness at the end of the day, that everything is one emanation, but you still recognize the distinction of these forms so that you can understand how the world works. Like let's take it really literal, right? If everything is one, then the creek and the river are one being, but it's kind of silly to call the river the creek or the lake the river or me and you the same thing, even though we are part of one central oneness. You see what I mean? You see why you would then say the different names for these different forms sort of comes together. So when you're looking at Babylon, you're looking at this inner form. And when we're looking at correspondence, Babylon is actually a pretty high level correspondence on the tree of life. She is tied to Binah. Binah is one of the highest sephirot in the tree of life. It is on the feminine side. It's on the feminine side, the pillar of severity. And it is the gateway to the very top. And what happens is the way that people, approach Babylon is when they are really far in their mystical journey, they have to eventually do this thing called crossing the abyss. When someone crosses the abyss, they have to lose themselves entirely. They have to go into this dark night of the soul period where they almost feel disconnected from divinity itself. But then with the power of their will, they push through it and they finally are able to dissolve the delusions and the things that hold on to them, the miasma, the impurities, all the rot that holds on to their body that gets ripped away through this process, that they can actually be ready to unite with the Godhead. And Babylon is a gateway through this. She's the way that you cross through it. And the office of the Scarlet Woman is when someone helps you experience that process, when someone embodies that principle, or you embody that for yourself. That is what it actually means. It's all about dissolution. The end goal of Thelema is to dissolve. And Babylon is a gateway to dissolution because what happens is you have to drop every last bit of your blood, every bit of yourself into her cup. That's what this whole cup idea. She's always holding a cup that dissolves you, a cup that annihilates you. And when you approach her, you have to dissolve yourself into the cup. You have to annihilate, you have to surrender. And then after you do that, you can reach those higher mysteries. And that is what she is. She's a dissolving principle because if the goal is to unite with the Godhead, to do the great work, you have to dissolve, you have to let go. And Babylon is the pathway to doing that because Babylon is the highest spear on this pillar of severity. She is Binah, she is Saturnian, right? She embodies this principle and she brings you closer to that completed mystic track. As well, I think this Binah correspondence is really interesting because that means that Babylon is fundamentally Saturnian, of Saturn, the great restrictor, the planet that takes away. And what's interesting is Thelema is overall a solar system. And when you look at the sort of things that the sun and Saturn represent, you see a real connection. And I want to use a time of the year to explain this. So on the winter solstice, the sun returns. But what is also the winter solstice? It's in the season of Capricorn, the season of Saturn, the darkest season of the year. But only through Saturn can the sun come back, because if there is not death, Saturn, Babylon, there cannot be rebirth, the sun. That can't exist without the other thing. And so without this death, this annihilation that Babylon actually represents, you cannot make it to the other side. And people find this name kind of shocking, right? Because they think of Revelations. But in reality, what Babylon is she is a red goddess. There's a really good book called The Red Goddess by Peter Gray that explores this in great depth. But she's actually a much more ancient type of goddess. She dates back to antiquity. The first goddess that looks like Babylon, in a sense, is Inanna Ishtar. Inanna Ishtar is a goddess from Mesopotamia and Samaria. She is the goddess of love and war, and she was the most popular cult. She was a powerful cult, a force to be reckoned with. And her ideas began to form goddesses like Astarte, and then eventually Aphrodite and Venus, the feminine principle, the goddess we most associate with femininity, and the goddess that is the most feared by the Abrahamic tradition. When the early Jewish religion emerged, there were two cults in the area. The cult of Astarte, well, three. The cult of Astarte, the cult of Baal, and then the cult of Yahweh. The cult of Yahweh would become the Jewish religion and later Christianity and arguably Islam, right? So what happened was the cult of Yahweh was a desert cult that was kind of on the fringes of society, and Astarte and Baal were the two main cults of the society. Baal was a storm and king god. Astarte is, of course, this love, beauty, sex, war goddess, and then Yahweh, the god that would later become the Christian and Jewish god, was a storm god. And Astarte was the big threat. Astarte was the cult that they were the most worried about, the one that they had the hardest bringing people in from because the archetype was so different. So Astarte had to be demonized. She had to be turned into this dark, evil form. And when you get into these religions, Astarte becomes the first evil force. And because, the fear of the feminine is so ingrained, Astarte actually gets renamed Astaroth. a male name because that feminine force was so feared. As well, when Christianity comes into play, Aphrodite and Venus was known as the goddess of the morning star, and the symbol for Inanna Ishtar is also the symbol of the morning star. That morning star becomes identified with Lucifer and once again demonized. This feminine force that was the number one worship force in the ancient world before this Abrahamic revolution becomes demonized and turned into something ugly. And when we look at the ages that we mentioned within Thelema, there are sort of, the ancient aeon, which is that feminine pagan time, that middle aeon, which is the aeon of the father, the aeon of the masculine principle, that's the Christian aeon. And then this new aeon that Thelema is trying to create, the aeon of Horus, the aeon of the future, the aeon of the perfected form, where you have both masculine and feminine represented. That masculine aeon demonized the feminine and feared it. And so, of course, what had to become the ultimate evil but this powerful feminine principle of love, beauty, sex, war? Because what is a more powerful force metaphysically than love? Love is a teacher of the highest mysteries. When you fall in love, and you really fall in love, you're not just using that person to settle, you actually have to annihilate yourself. You have to surrender to that relationship. You have to give yourself to it. You have to allow eros to turn into agape, and you lose yourself in that connection. And eventually you have to form into a new being, a couple, right? That is the divine process. Love, when you feel it and you allow it to grow and really exist, you surrender yourself, they surrender yourself, and you become something new. You both die and then are reborn as a unit. And if you go on to have children, that happens again in a very profound way. And so what the divine masculine aeon wanted to do is eliminate the feminine. And then some people now, they start like Dianic Wicca or something where they're trying to eliminate the masculine principle. That's just as much a disservice. The masculine and the feminine need to go together because that is the cosmic order. Without yin, there cannot be yang. Without creation, there cannot be destruction. The cosmic balance is of the utmost importance, and we need to experience that within our development. Now, I want to talk about how Babylon enters Thelema, because Babylon is very much an obscured name. So Babylon is a secret name of Nuit. Nuit and Babylon are the same central femininity. So where do we really allow Babylon to enter and understand where she comes from? So the way that Babylon enters Thelema metaphysically is through Enochian. Enochian is a system of magic that involves communicating with angels. Angels are a big part of Thelema. One of the big things you need to do as a Thelemite is contact your holy guardian angel, and of course, Enochian's brought up a lot. So a lot of the information we have about Babylon is from an Enochian channeled text called The Vision and the Voice. This was channeled by Crowley when he surfed, I like this term surfed, but he explored all the Enochian aethers, which are the different sort of octaves and aspects of this angelic system. And Babylon really enters through this. And previously, Babylon had entered through Enochian with John Dee. John Dee was a really important, actually, Christian occultist and astrologer. He's the one who really discovered Enochian and brought it to us. There's a specific Enochian channeling that he did called the Daughter of Fortitude. And if you read the Daughter of Fortitude, this is Babylon sort of entering into the world. And through Enochian, she really becomes fleshed out and explored. And there were occultists within Thelema after Crowley who explored Babylon in even greater depth. There was Jack Parsons. He was very, very interested in this current. And, there's a lot of modern Thelemic women who have explored this as well. There's even whole organizations devoted to her and exploring her mysteries, like literal divine feminine Thelemic organizations, which is really cool because, people are concerned about Thelemic men. So, if we can make our own groups, solution there. But of course, the divine masculine still needs to be represented. We can't overcorrect. That's certainly not the answer. So what Babylon is the inside of Nuit. And this really, is important to understand because I think some people conceive Nuit and Babylon as like light and dark femininity, right? Like Nuit is that mother archetype and Babylon, she's the whore. And so many people have this complex in their brain, the Madonna whore complex, that there's like two femininities. The good feminine, the yay, she's like Mother Mary, and then there's the bad feminine, boo, boo. But the reality is, this dichotomy isn't real because both of these exist within every woman. The light and the dark exist together. Thelema is not a dualist system. Many religions are. They're like, oh, there's this cosmic battle between good and evil. But in reality, good and evil have to go together. The divine is not all good. No, but the divine isn't also all evil. And, this darker femininity isn't evil. It's been demonized, but in reality, it is just part of the female experience. And it's actually a disservice to even these light feminine ideas like motherhood to pretend that these things are dichotomous. Think about what a mother is, especially in nature. A mother is, of course, someone that nurtures. Like let's think about bears, okay? We're gonna talk about bears. So a mother bear nurtures her young. She feeds them, but she also has to protect them. If someone comes near her young, she will maul someone to death. She will kill you. And that is also maternal. That is also part of it. Love, war, mothering, that all goes together within the feminine, is present in all women, and Thelema recognizes this. It allows us to explore, and there certainly are some Thelemites who have had a limited mind and, kind of seen this on a surface level and not really explore it deeper, not explore the feminine mysteries, and that's not good. But for people who do, they see that this femininity is complex, nuanced, and Thelema allows you to honor and connect to all aspects of the feminine, every single archetype, because within femininity, there are so many different archetypes. There is not just one. There are many, many parts of the feminine story, and Thelema allows us to explore all of them. So in a sense, I would say Thelema has an incredible exploration of the feminine because both sides are present and they're actually within one being. Because at the end of the day, Thelema believes all is connected, all is one, all is union, all is yoga, all is one existing metaphysical being. We are not separate. There is no separation. And that is a key part of the great work. And only by approaching the feminine can you do the great work. Many Thelemic rituals cannot be performed without a woman embodying the divine feminine. They literally can't be done. Like, it doesn't work. You can't only have the divine masculine. Divine feminine is a vital, important part of the Thelemic mysteries. So that's all I have to say. I'm Georgina Rose. You can find me on this channel, on Patreon. This channel is supported through Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you get a bonus video every month. You get ritual guides, which are 20 pages of rituals that you can follow along with. You get mentorship calls with me where I give you direct advice on your spiritual practice. As well, I'm a professional tarot reader and astrologer. If you want to book a tarot reading or a natal chart or planetary remediation reading, click below. You can sign up and I can give you a long reading to explore your own nature, your own power, and help you discover who you are. As well, I'm on Twitter, Substack, TikTok, Instagram, Threads. I'm everywhere that matters. So just not Facebook. I'm everywhere but Facebook. I also host the podcast Pagan Perspectives by Georgina Rose. You can listen to that on this channel or on all the podcasting platforms that matter, so Spotify. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. And I hope you have an amazing day, afternoon, mid-morning, mid-evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This has been Georgina Rose. Like and subscribe. And if you're subscribed for 93 days, you will meet your holy guardian angel, and you'll never need to think about the divine feminine ever again. All right, bye for real.